All right. Thank you, Brenda. It is interesting this month, this April, a number of religions' holy days, including Ramadan, Passover, Easter, Vaisakhi, Ridvan, and even more overlap for the first time since 1991.
Wow.
Meaning that many Muslims, Jews, Christians, Baha'is, Sikhs, Hindus, Buddhists, and others will all be simultaneously observing their holy days. Now, as an interfaith group, I pray that we may all unite in our trust, in our hope, in our supplications to our God, to our Creator, that we may indeed understand better the needs of those around us, that we may understand better the opportunity to unite our efforts together in meeting those needs, and that through our prayers, our supplications, our beseechments to our Creator, to our God, to our Heavenly Father, we may have the help, the divine help necessary to solve not only the matters within our own lives, within our own communities, but also to have help in these turbulent times of war, of pestilence, of pandemic, of contentions, and that all may go well. Just this past weekend, we had our general conference for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And our president and prophet, Russell M. Nelson, noted that with all of the contentions and divisiveness pervading the world right now, each one of us individually could take the opportunity between now and Easter, or during our holy days period, whatever our faith may be, to resolve, to repair one of those damaged relationships in our own lives, to find some place in our own life that we have a contention or a dispute, and resolve that so that we may indeed be peacemakers, not only peace hopers. And I thought that was a wonderful counsel to us, that during this period of holy day, whatever our faith may be, could we do something individually in our own life to create peace, to resolve the contention, or put a matter behind us. Now, with that thought, I offer a prayer in the tradition of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Our Father in heaven, we come together before you as a community of friends, of different faiths, of community organizations, intent on understanding and meeting the needs of those around us. We are grateful for the collaboration that we have and the workings of thy spirit and inspiration and ideas in our midst, that we may unite together. We pray that as we have this discussion today, we may learn more, we may feel connected one with another, that we may feel connected with thee, and that we may utilize that unity in doing good in our community. We pray for those in elected and governing positions, that they may have wisdom and strength, that as we have Supervisor Dan Storck with us today, that we may feel thy blessings flowing to and through him as he conducts business within the Mount Vernon District and Fairfax County, that will be of benefit, and that he may hear and follow what thou wouldst have us do collectively for the good of all around us. Now we pray for these blessings and for thy Spirit to attend us in this meeting and in all that we do. We pray in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Keith, for that wonderful devotional. It gives us a lot to think about. We are going to move right on into our session because we want to use as much time as we can. And so we're first of all, I want to say welcome again to each person who has joined us today. We are going to turn it over to our Mount Vernon District Supervisor, Dan Storck. Vic sent him questions in advance, some topics that we're concerned with, which surrounded shelter update, the Pendle Mobile Home Park, and thoughts on the Fairfax County budget and allocation of funds. And those are just some of the things that we had some concerns about. And so we're going to invite Mount Vernon District Supervisor Dan Storck to just share in his own way, and then we will open up for questions after he makes his presentation. Supervisor Storck. We see your keyboard.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have to flip my camera on, and I have to take a few minutes to figure out how to do that. But I can start, and I know it's hold on. I've done it once before, but I have to admit it's been a while.
That's okay.
I'm going to just turn it off for now, and I'll start because it's mostly going to be a presentation. By the time we get to the end, I'll have flipped it. So I apologize for the but I think most of you know what I look like, and if you do, if you're not sure, just, I like to think of myself as a young, handsome individual. So even if you don't know what I look like, then there you go. Thank you, Christine. And excuse me. And I've had this problem before when I've hooked this this PC up to another screen. So I'll work on that as we go through the presentation. But excuse me, we've got with us today several people on my staff, and I think most of you have met them or at least know of them. First and foremost is my chief of staff, Christine Morin, and Christine, for those of you who haven't worked with her before, she's been involved with really Mount Vernon and our community for a long, long time. She and I first met about 17 or 18 years ago when she was an advocate in the Lorton area for new and faster schools. Basically, we got an elementary school and a middle school. In addition to her, she also has been the coordinator and the manager really of our meetings for the Beacon Hill, PennDOT, affordable housing and emergency shelter and fire station task force. And that'll be continuing, and you'll be hearing a little bit more about that at the end of my presentation today. Additionally, Nick Reinhardt, Nick is going to be doing the presentation today, and Nick handles, if you will, all things land use and development, and as well as kind of the broader housing development that we're doing in our community. And finally, who's not here today, she's on spring break with her husband, who's a teacher, Alex Kramer. Alex is our human services and housing coordinator. So for those of you who haven't met them, please come into the office or give us a call, and look forward to you engaging with them. We have a wonderful, amazing staff who frankly helps me to do more than I ever thought imaginable because of their great work. So thank you. And with that, we'll start with the slideshow. And I'm going to clear my throat here a minute, so I'm going to mute myself.
I'm not sure who the host of the meeting is, but it's saying in order for me to share the presentation,
Okay.
I need host privileges.
Give me a quick second.
And while Nick's getting that going, we have also my partner in Mount Vernon, and all things Mount Vernon District, and a good friend of mine for now decades, Karen Corbett Sanders, our school board representative. Karen, good morning to you, and thank you for being part of the presentation. And please, I'll state the obvious. Please feel free to chime in on anything that particularly connects with what you're working on with our schools and community.
I'll see that.
Partnering with you, Dan.
Always my pleasure, Karen. So we'll get started with this, and we know the particular interest of everybody in our community, and whether it's the schools to the parents and kids, but even seniors, we know is housing. And the concern that we all have is, as our community changes, what does that mean for the folks who live here now, as well as what does it mean for people who want to live here? And so we're going to talk a lot about it, really going to talk a lot about that today. And I know that's a particular interest for VIC. Nick, anytime.
Nick's muted.
Okay. We've got a lot of folks involved with housing. As I think most of you know, not only the Board of Supervisors, we have a housing committee that Supervisor John Faust chairs, our Redevelopment Housing Authority, the RHA. We've got our community housing and development. All those folks truly work on housing and supportive housing and affordable housing every day. We have councils and preservation task force. I'll talk about a little bit of those a little bit later in the presentation. Advisory committees, and in particular, something that I know most of you are aware of is the Manufactured Housing Task Force and their work. We've got all kinds of plans. The one that we talk about the most on the board is the Housing Blueprint, which is our commitment, if you will, to how, not only what we want to do, but how we're going to get there. And for those of you who may or may not be aware, we just increased our housing goal for 2035 from 5,000 to 10,000. We're in good shape to do 5,000. We believe we can do more. We know that may still not be enough, but we don't want to set a goal that we don't think is realistic for us to meet, even though it will be a stretch, and that clearly will be a stretch. And then the One Fairfax policy is what really connects us all together. It's the kind of the overriding aspiration and commitment that we have, that we will move our community together. Whether you're the poorest or the richest, we're together. Whether you're black or white or brown or regardless or particular religious affiliation, we're committed to equity and having us all work together. Okay. Affordable Housing Guide, encourage everybody to take a look at the guide. It's a great resource. It has a lot of information about low and moderate income households and what's available and how to access those resources. So you can access this by going to the website, fairfaxcounty.gov/housing, and please take a look. I think you'll learn a bit. I know that I have. And then we have several key housing programs. A housing choice voucher program, it's formerly Section 8 housing. It's a key part of what we offer as a way of providing housing. There's never enough of it to go around, and that's also true. It's federally funded, so federal funding for that has not really increased much. We do have emergency housing vouchers, which we utilize and the county utilizes to support folks who are homeless, as well as people who are not choosing, if you will, to use our shelters and other housing. We sometimes can provide that. And we have a number of rental assistance programs that are available. This is information just about the Fairfax County Rehabilitation and Housing Authority. They are the county agency, if you will, that is involved with housing. We have, and from the Mount Vernon district, we have Elizabeth Lardner is our representative. We've been blessed with a number of folks who have represented us there, and I'm comfortable. And Elizabeth has been doing it for. I know she originally was appointed by Jerry. I appointed Matt, and then Elizabeth has agreed to come back and work again. So take a look. There's more information there for anybody who would like to learn more. The dashboard is a great resource. If you haven't been to it, take a look. It is I think, I don't know, I think it's one of the best around because it has anything and almost everything you'd want to know about housing, whether it's affordable housing or homelessness, tenant landlord conflicts, fair housing commitments, obviously job opportunities, et cetera. So again, it's a great resource, and please feel free to take a look, and I think you'll be able to learn as I do. Almost every time you go there, there's additional information you can find. And I think it's fairly convenient and easy to use. So the dashboard is the county's major tool for really the data that we have and how to understand what we do and how we do it. I mentioned earlier that there was a community housing strategic plan that was put together, and a number of our housing organizations were part of that, and they identified that we needed, frankly, I think it's 15,000 in 15 years. We committed to 5 because we knew that was a goal we could meet. We're now moved that to 10, but we recognize that we still have more to go. And frankly, anybody who's looked at that and looked at the housing demand that we have in our area, I have no illusions that will be adequate either. I don't think we can build enough housing in the short term. And as you'll hear from me a little bit later, I think it's important that we build a lot more housing, because that is one way to make sure that we have the housing in our areas is more affordable. So this is the committed affordable rental homes. What does this mean? It means these are really financial commitments that the county, using state or federal resources, have made to, if you will, assure us of this level of housing, this level of subsidized housing, if you will, around the county. And you can take a look at this and you can see how that housing is dispersed around the county. You can see some areas that have a lot more, which obviously is the Richmond Highway corridor. You see areas that have a lot less, which is much of Springfield, although, you know, some of the Springfield area is more rural, so it wouldn't likely to have as much. But part of the objective of the board and a commitment that we've made as part of our equity lens, our One Fairfax, is to ensure that housing is dispersed, you know, equitably and appropriately around the county. And you can look at this and see that some districts have practically nothing, and clearly we need to focus on increasing the amount of housing there. For those of you who are familiar with Providence District and Tyson's, we actually increased the percentage of housing that has to be included with Tyson's as it gets built out. So there's steps that the board has taken to try to do that, but it's something that we'll always be working on. One of the interesting things here is you can look at Mount Vernon and see that we're about at 11%. And you might think, well, we have a lot more housing than that, and we do, but this is the committed, or if you will, the subsidized housing at this point. It's going to go up because we've added some units, and you'll see that as we go forward, because as you look at this, you'll see the date on this is as of May 2021. We have some units that are like North Hill and around the metro station that are clearly going to increase that. But Lee District is clearly also one of the higher ones. But the specific locations in Mount Vernon, you can see that are listed here. And again, you can see that North Hill is not on there yet. It will be when this is updated. You can also see that Washington Square is on here, and some of the other developments that frankly we're familiar with in our community. The next part is, and this is historically has been the most important in our area, is market affordable rental homes. It's also, for those of you who remember, and this is what particularly got my attention, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, when there was a study that was done that showed the city of Alexandria had gone from one level of affordable housing to essentially about 90% less in the course of 10 or 15 years. The vast majority of that in the city of Alexandria had to do with the loss of market affordable rental homes. Frankly, they didn't do what they needed to do to make sure that they had more market affordable rental homes. It's a challenge for any community that's changing, and clearly will be a challenge for the Mount Vernon district, but it's one that we have to be deliberate and conscious of. And I think we can help to at least ensure that my two commitments, and I know you heard me say this before, is one, leave no one behind, meaning that housing and opportunities to continue to live in our community will be here regardless of how this community moves forward. And number two, that we help and work and support not only individuals, but communities reach their full potential. And you cannot do that without sufficient amount of affordable homes, rental homes. And I would argue and speak a lot about also having affordable owner-owned homes as well. I think the core of any community is having owner-owned homes that everybody can afford to enjoy. Okay, you can see now in Mount Vernon where some of those locations are. And again, they're areas that I think most of us are familiar with. Excuse me. The one that's not shown up that I think of oftentimes is the one at Woodlawn Manor, which is right at the corner, right at the tip of Lee District and Mount Vernon District. Yeah, thank you, Nick. There's a huge numbers of market affordable homes there, but they're in Lee District, so they're not specifically showing up here. But you get a good idea of what's available and where they located. We've just in the last 6 months, I guess I would say, have preserved some of that market of affordable homes, and we'll reference that a little bit later when we show some of the specific locations of those affordable rental areas, as well as the acquisitions that we've made to support and try to maintain a higher level of affordable homes. Okay, our goal up until a month ago, our goal was to have 5,000 additional homes in 15 years, 5,000 additional affordable homes. We're at 1,900. Actually, it's probably a little bit higher than that. Again, this is as of almost a year ago, and we know we've added things to the pipeline, and we're looking pretty good to have met that 5,000. In fact, that's really the board's felt that we could and should do better, and that's the commitment that you're seeing here. I know that that's not going to be adequate. As I mentioned earlier, there's no doubt that to meet our affordable housing needs, we're going to have not only more market affordable, but especially more preserved, or if you will, subsidized affordable. These are some of the developments that we've identified. I think this is a pretty comprehensive list. This is Mount Vernon and Lee. It's mostly along Richmond Highway corridor, which is what we wanted to share with everybody. North Hill is the one that you've heard us talking a lot, you heard me talking a lot about, because essentially it was my focus for the last 7 years is that we get that built. And it had frankly sat for 30 plus years as a development to be done and an affordable housing development to be done. And I am very pleased to have worked very hard with our housing folks and many others to be bringing that across the finish line this year. So you will see those come on market. Some will be this summer, a few will be in the fall, but all affordable, which is core. The Arden, which is also going to be ending and completing about the same time. That's right next to the metro station. It's an excellent development. Wesley Housing is doing that, and very pleased with that. And then the Landings 1 and 2, those are currently affordable, market-based affordable homes. And over time, they will, as tenants leave, they will become focused on truly all affordable, 60 to 80% of the average median income in our county. The AMI, average median income, is about $130,000. So it's still a lot of money, but it's household income, not individual income. So that's part of how we did. And additionally, we do have the need for what we call 30%, which are essentially situations where folks maybe don't have a lot of income. Maybe they're on supplemental security income or Social Security, or have some other fixed income that's very low. They're still able to live in those units because as long as they'll pay about 30% of their income and to live there, even if that is very low amount of money. City side is one that's more recently been acquired as a formerly, again, just a market rate affordable. It's now, if you will, long-term affordable because it's owned by a housing organization. Huntington, Spring Garden. I mean, most of these, I think you'll recognize the names. Some of them are fully affordable. Some are just portions, are units within the development that are affordable. Gum Springs Glen is a senior, and I'll talk about that one in just a minute. West Ford, Audubon. And you can see some of the newer ones that are coming on board and the percentages of affordable that will be part of their development. Some of it, like Shelby, is already there, been there for a number of years. But the newer ones, Belvoir Apartments, as well as Alexandria Crossings, those are all have key parts of it. More than 10% of them are affordable units within it. I want to kind of share my view of how we protect and how we preserve and how we ensure that we leave no one behind as we change, as our community changes, as the highway, we invest in $1 billion in widening and bringing bus rapid transit down the highway. As all those developments move along, we have to make sure that we don't leave anybody behind. And that's not easy. And I recognize that. And I know that I've had many conversations with I think many of you about whether or not that's really going to happen and how do we make sure it happens and what's the guarantee. There isn't a guarantee, there's just a commitment. And the commitment is based upon, I think, good, sound assessments of what's possible and making sure that we stay focused on that. And the first one of these is what I've spent the most of the time talking about so far, which is purchasing and or supporting nonprofits, whether the county purchases or supports nonprofits, and purchasing land and existing housing to build and preserve affordable housing. Yes, that's the landings, that's the city side, as well as it's the North Hill, where we partnered with, in essence, with Chipin. We provided funding as well as we helped them get federal tax credits. It's really an all of the above financial strategy to do that. It's also taking county-owned land in the case of Beacon Hill and the land at the former Highland Valley Nursery land that was purchased for a fire station, and using that to also add additional housing and providing additional emergency and supportive housing as part of that. So it's using every possible resource. We've also looked at many other county properties throughout Mount Vernon, and there are some that I will see in the future that I think will likely have affordable housing. I'm not going to go into specifics, but those are things that we clearly have looked at the broad plan and how do we increase that supply. For those of you who go to the government center, the commitment that we made to build affordable housing on the current property of the government center buildings, that's another example of taking county land and repurposing it for housing. The second item is the ADU, affordable dwelling unit, and the WDU, workforce dwelling unit policy. There's percentages and formulas that are used to commit certain levels of housing for any development that happens. The ADU program is based upon the particular zoning for that development, and that can identify the amount or the percentage of housing that has to be ADU. The WDU is a little bit more straightforward. It's a 60 to 80% of the AMI, and that policy essentially can vary, but for WDU only, and for most of our area, it's 8%. We have it higher in our transit development, in our transit development areas, as well as there is a affordable percentage for owner-owned homes that are part of any development. So those are key elements of anything that we do. And for those of you who know me, I don't think some of those percentages are high enough, and I've worked, will continue to work with the board to try to increase those, but they are what the board has approved at this point. And then the third item, and this is in many ways the most essential, I think, to ensuring that we keep a strong, affordable stock of housing. You know, our market rate housing is a function historically of that we've had older houses along our highway, and those older homes just don't, those older units just don't bring the same value, don't bring the same rents that a newer unit does. So a key focus of this is, as long as we have those units, and if we can preserve those in some more formal way, I'm very supportive of doing that. But regardless, building as much new units along Richmond Highway as we can, because the more newer units we build, and again, 90% or so of those will be market rate homes, that additional housing stock creates competition for the rest of the housing on the corridor, and enables, frankly, people who want to move this corridor and want to rent or own a place, and enables them to do just that without pushing out somebody who may be paying lower rent in another housing community. So supply demand does matter, and my objective is to increase supply such that we stay ahead of demand, such that there will continue to be an affordable market rate stock of housing. Senior independent living communities, they're an essential part of also making sure no one gets left behind. And we have a number of them in the area. And the good news is we've got one at North Hill that's going to be coming online. Currently, we have Gum Springs Glen, which is operating now, and looking to obviously add some more units to there. But you can see 60 units right on Richmond Highway. It's a beautiful facility. It's absolutely, more people want to go there than can go there. So it's one of those things that we're always have an insufficient supply of housing that we would like to have for the people in our communities. RHA senior housing across South County. I want to just share this with you. The Crest of Alexandria is at the end of Jeff Todd Way and Telegraph. It's right at the edge of Mount Vernon District. It's actually in Lee District. Lindsay Hill is in Lorton. And I mentioned North Hill has 63 future affordable housing units that will be there. In addition to just housing overall, we focus on the human services side of housing, not only with what we call the emergency housing piece that we've been talking about, but also the units that we've had some challenges with. Gum Springs Glen, in particular, there's been some issues with the maintenance, and we have folks come into our office all the time, whether it's about Gum Springs Glen or Woodley Hills Manor, Woodley Hills Estate, sorry. And just that's part of the nature of our office, that people come to us with issues and concerns they have about housing, whether it's privately owned housing or, in this case, public housing or housing that's owned and subsidized through the public. So Gum Springs Glen is one of those that we've worked with, and we've been supporting RHA and making sure that that gets done, it's maintained properly. Hagel Circle, we've had several different challenges down there in the last couple of years with security and public safety. We spent a great deal of time there about a year ago, organizing and trying to get some changes in the community that we think are essential. We've had the Franconia, it's a Franconia police station, folks that service that area. I've had a walkthrough as well as meetings there. I've met folks, and we've talked to the leadership there and about additional lighting, as well as improving the security, the fences that are there to really provide better protection to the residents, and other things to try to discourage people who may not behave properly or may not act in a way that's safe for others. We'll continue to do that. We've got a number of initiatives there, particularly in Hegel Circle over the next few months, and looking forward to increasing those safety and public issues, improvement issues there. And finally, very proud of the fact that my predecessor Jerry got the community center moved up on the development queue, and I in turn was able to get that development so that it was connected to and co-located with our library, and got the county library there, Lorton Library, to be advanced more than 5 years ahead of schedule to be renovated. So that whole complex of library, community center will be opening this summer. And their actually staff is going to be starting to hire folks really in the next couple months. As soon as we approve our third quarter carryover, it'll get the staffing will be able to get started hiring folks there. But that'll be a major development. I think a major way of engaging, connecting kids not only to recreation but education, and co-locating those facilities, I think, is a huge part of the libraries of the future. Manufactured Housing Task Force, they've been working for a number of months now, and both Alex as well as Nick go to those meetings. They monitor those and provide feedback and information to me and to our team. There's some information about the most recent meetings, which included a Harmony Place presentation. The board has also had a couple different closed sessions, discussions about Harmony Place and what we can and would like to do to ensure the residents are protected and the housing there is improved. Our area is strongly represented. In fact, if you go to the next slide, you can see the strong presentation, but there's 7 recommendations that they're making. Their draft, they're currently working through those that they're really about communication and improving communication with all of us, and especially the residents, making sure that they're engaged and understand any changes that may be considered and their voices are heard as part of that process. And then these are the members, and the ones that are highlighted are all what I would call the kind of the Richmond Highway Corridor representatives. Some are from Lee's, some are in Mount Vernon, but they all know us and know the corridor. We have representatives of both folks who live there as well as the owners of those some of those facilities. And then we have developers, and we have housing developers as well, and not-for-profit housing managers. So a good mix of folks. And then obviously the key county staff members, as well as folks like Leah Tonoyo, who's been very involved with housing and Good Shepherd Church's ministry especially to our Latino community. And of course, Mary, the South County Task Force is a huge part of the advocacy there. So thank you, Mary. These are some of the engagements that we've been involved with manufacturing, meaning my office and myself have been involved with manufactured housing. About a year ago, we did a door-to-door. I literally went door-to-door with Diego in my office at the time, knocked on doors, talked to the residents, as well as we had an on-site meeting to discuss the proposed site-specific plan amendments that had been presented for those communities. And we talked about lots of things in that. Clearly that was one, but the focus was what you might expect is, does this impact me? And this is my home, this is my community, and I don't want to change unless, oh, by the way, unless you can do this or that, which would make this place a little bit better. I mean, all of us have things that we see that can make a difference in our lives. April, May of 2021, Diego and I did something similar with the Woodley Hills Estates, which is next to North Hill. And we met with them. They had some maintenance issues as well as their concerns about Embark BRT and Dart Drive, which is the access point to their community. And then this past February, we not only sent letters to Pindar Terrace mobile home community, but we also met in person with them and the surrounding property owners at the Evolution Homes store. and had presentations by county staff as well as the developer and myself about what that would look like as part of the Alexandria Crossing development, which does not take away, it doesn't change the PennDOT Terrace community at all, but it's next door to them, and they obviously would want to know what's going on and how it might affect them. And we spent a couple hours doing that. And then future, there will absolutely continue to be Embark, BRT, VDOT, VDOT engagements. We have one that we're currently working on now. I'm sure there'll be more than that. Excuse me. Christine, could you do that while I clear my throat, please? Thank you. Are you there? Oh, I guess I'll do it. I think people are generally familiar with the project site for the PennDOT fire station, and then the new emergency and supportive housing project. The emergency housing is designed to, frankly, be the next generation of a Kennedy shelter, where we not only have 24-hour emergency housing and supportive beds, but also kind of the stair step and the housing first approach to housing that we are really adopting as a county. And we've been working on this for a while. And so you have emergency housing, you then have supportive housing for those folks who are able to maybe have their own place with a little bit of support. And then the next level after that is there will be affordable housing on that site as well. What that'll look like now, it's still in design, and the beginning of that design process is getting ready to start. And the group that will be essential to doing that is the architecture and engineering firm, which was just selected, as well as the advisory committee. The existing advisory committee is getting kind of reinvigorated with folks who will be now focused on designing not only the fire station, but also what this housing will look like, how it will sit on the property, ultimately the kinds of services and supports that it will have. And truly, this task force is the way that the community engages, much like I've done before with the Lorton Community Center, and as I did with the South County Police Station and Animal Shelter. These committees are essential to making sure that we have good, strong community input and the design, as well as the services that will be provided there. I do have to thank a few folks who are very, very involved with helping us to engage in the community. We all know when we talk about homeless shelters or emergency housing, there's lots of concerns and I think lots of fears, I would say, that get raised. I think most of them are not reasonable or maybe appropriate, but they're nonetheless people's genuine fears and concerns. VIC was a huge part of advocating and educating and frankly engaging with folks to make sure that we at least provided the information that could get people past maybe some of their fears and concerns. I especially want to thank Jeannie McCreary and the Kennedy Shelter Allies and the Mount Vernon Social Justice. Those folks literally put boots on the ground. They went knocking on doors, which I think is the most powerful way to break through some of the misunderstandings and even some of the misrepresentations that occurred as a result of doing this. We heard that different times that X percentage were strongly against it, and then you knock some doors and you find out, well, no, I have this question or concern, but no, I support this housing, but it isn't that, it's not like I'm necessarily for or against, I just have questions or concerns. And when you address those, folks feel differently about it. And that's really that kind of education and communication is essential. And we will continue to do that. It's a strong belief that I have, and it's a core part of how I think we get things done in the Mount Vernon district. So thank you. Okay, let's see if I got my camera fixed right. I'm going to try it right now, and hopefully I don't embarrass myself, but it's a miracle. Whether you like it or not, you can look at me. So or you can still, you can put stuff up in front of the screen, but happy to be part of the conversation today. And I'm happy to take any and all questions that folks might have about the presentation first, and then we can open up to other questions or concerns people might have. But on housing first, I would love to see if we can address anything that you all might have. And I'm going to mute myself while I drink some water here.
We do have a question in the chat, and I'm going to read that one first, and that's coming from Renee Grebe. How will the board's proposed changes in the bond cycle from 4 to 6 years affect funding for housing projects such as the new Mount Vernon shelter and other permanent supportive housing? And Renee, if you want to add some more to that question, or is that all you want to say?
Nope, that captures it. Thank you.
The answer is it will not affect it. There will be changes, and what those changes will be, I think what staff has proposed, that the board hasn't decided that. Part of the questions that the board is still asking is making sure that those bonds and those needs are not harmed in any way. The funding that we need for the shelter and the funding that we need for housing is really, we already have that in the pipeline. In fact, there's a lot of money, there's millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars in the pipeline right now that can be used. So the emergency housing, the fire station, those have all been funded. We have a significant amount of housing funding already. The ARPA money, the money that the federal government provided for the pandemic, that is also, that's also a huge part of the money we have right now. So in the short term, it's not really a lack of money for housing to do the number of projects that we can do. Longer term, we clearly are going to need to devote and identify more money for housing. But bonds are, whatever bonds we have are really a function of what we're willing to allocate in our budget. Because if you have a bond, you have to pay for the bond, and the way to pay for the bond is you take it out of your budget every year. So I don't see that as a limiting factor at this point, but the board is still, I think, working through this.
Any other questions or concerns?
I do.
Mary, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Yeah, I had 2 questions, Dan. I want to thank you for the presentation. That was very comprehensive and very good. So my 2 questions quickly are, one is that all the documents that you presented about the housing blueprint and strategy, et cetera, predict that we're going to need 45,000 units of affordable housing, meaning for families making less than $77,000 a year, basically. And the board goal
countywide.
Countywide, and the board goal is to build 10,000. So there's pretty big gap there. And you're saying it's not probably realistic to try to build the 45,000. And yet you're also saying that no one will be left behind in Mount Vernon district, and that we'll make enough housing for people at different income levels. So I'm just trying to reconcile those 2 numbers and statements. That's one question. And the other one is the market rate housing. We've been looking at some of the CoStar real estate reports, and they really show the Mount Vernon apartments rents going up quite remarkably, like some of them 20% this year. And I know that's happening everywhere around the country, but here it's happening even faster for some reason. And we're really concerned that the one of the housing advisory committees determined that we had 9,000 market rate units in the county, and about half of those were in Mount Vernon and Lee. And if we start quickly losing all these market rate affordable housing, if the rent prices them out of being affordable, there's going to be a real issue. There's going to be a lot more people who need affordable housing. We're trying to get the county to commit to keeping a closer eye on the possible loss of market rate. And I hope you will support us in that. We'd like to have that checked every 6 months to a year, not every 5 years. I think that's way too long to go.
Mary, as you and I talked, I think a month or two ago, we have to do a study that's more frequent than that. So I've already had that conversation with Tom Fleetwood, and I've shared that with some of my colleagues. So you can't have good data if you don't have something that's more timely than that. So I'm with that. I think to talk about your second question first, I don't think there's any way, I mean, truly, I don't know of any way, I'll say it that way, that we can build our way out of this without help from the private sector, meaning we have to have developers who are building housing that and numbers of units of housing, or I guess at a minimum, revitalizing some of that housing faster than we have people moving in. If we're not, then we're going to be like the city of Alexandria. We're going to be pushing out the people at the lowest rung, because when somebody wants to live here and they have more money than somebody else, then they're going to bid up the price of housing, and we're not going to be able to keep our community and keep folks who've lived in this community for a long time, which is absolutely my commitment, that they can continue to live and hopefully live, work, and play and learn here and raise their families. So that's part of the key item in number 3 is that, and I get pushback on that. People say, well, that means there's more people moving in, more traffic, et cetera. These people are going to move here anyways. I mean, the jobs and the opportunities are just going to continue. We have to find a way to provide and offer and have available housing that they can live in, so that they're not pushing out folks that are already here. And we are already behind. Absolutely, we are already behind. And I can't. All I can say is that we have to move faster on those and make sure that we are providing that kind of housing, the range of housing. So it's not only the market rate, meaning the high or the lower end of market rate, but it's also then guaranteeing some of that housing, which is the slide that I was showing you, is that those new developments have in them some commitment to affordable housing. It's not adequate. I agree, I'm not arguing with that, but it is where we are at the moment. And we need to change some of what the board's expectations. We need to get at least to, in my mind, the workforce dwelling unit, that needs to be at least a 10 to 12% goal instead of an 8% goal. We can't, 10% is the bare minimum in my mind, but, and the county will have to continue to put more money and more focus on housing. We've made some improvements there. We've got a long way to go. We can't do it alone. We need our partners, the Good Shepherds of the world, the Wesleys and others to help us get federal tax credits, get private money. We have Amazon money that's looked at our community, and there's several different locations that we are aware that, and we've worked to some degree with them to identify housing that could also improve what's available. It's going to be a perennial issue, and I don't see it going away. And I see that we're always going to be struggling to catch up. I don't see a way to get in front of it other than to try to increase the amount of investment in market rate homes, because that's the easiest thing to get money for. And by adding more housing there, we have the numbers of units that are available, and the vacancy rates, if you will, are low enough that landlords just can't raise their rents by 20%. It just won't be possible.
And can I have 2 quick follow-up? In our CoStar list, we found that there were no apartments available for people making less than 40% AMI. So the market is not serving really poor people at all here. The other, and of course, there are people who still need apartments who are, 60% AMI, 80%, but it doesn't serve the lower end of the income ladder. And the other thing is I'm concerned that the county is actually putting less money into affordable housing of its own money this year's budget. It's using the federal ARPA funds and some carryover funds to produce an affordable housing budget pretty similar to last year, maybe a tiny bit more. And it concerns me that while the board is declaring that affordable housing is a big priority, and I'm glad they're saying that, but it doesn't seem to be a big priority in the budget. And you know what they say about budgets being, if it's not a priority in a budget, it's not a priority. So can you comment on that?
Sure. I think we will have to increase the amount that we explicitly put in our budget, but we also have an opportunity right now to utilize really all the funds that we can effectively utilize with the ARPA money. So at the moment, I don't think we have to put a specific dollar amount in the budget more than what's already being considered, but next year we will. And the year after that, we will. I mean, there's no doubt that we have to, and part of it is we have to look at, and you've heard me say this is a broken record. We have to look at other sources of income. I tell everybody I talk to that we get 23 cents back from the state government for every dollar we send to Richmond. If we just got 1% more, we could reduce our tax rate or repurpose more of our tax rate for housing. I mean, up to 20 cents of our tax rate would be freed up by doing that. So yes, it does matter. The county can't do it alone. And at the same time, I really would prefer that the state not do something statewide, because we usually don't get a great deal when they do that. I'd rather they just return some of the tax dollars we already pay to them, just return them to us and let us utilize that for the needs that we've identified. And clearly one of the top ones would be housing. But I think you'll have to do what we all do, which is make sure that the budgets each year reflect what we can effectively utilize and continue to increase that. I don't think there's any way around that.
We have a couple more in the chat, but I also have a question, Dan, and it's maybe not be a question, but a statement for consideration. One of the concerns I know of the African-American population in Fairfax County is that their children can no longer afford to buy a home in Fairfax County. And I think that becomes a real issue when we look at the numbers of African Americans that live in Fairfax County, which is not a large number. And is the Board of Supervisors even looking at that prospect at all, as far as being able to maybe look at job opportunities, career opportunities to help younger African Americans be able to stay in this area? And the professional African Americans who did grow up in here are moving to areas like Woodbridge or further south because they can afford homes down there, and they can't afford to buy homes, not rent. They don't want to rent, they want to buy.
One of the key things that I brought to the board when I first got on the board, because it really wasn't in my mind a focus, and I raise it every time we talk about housing. If you ever listen to any of our committee meetings, or just in general, we're talking about housing, it's one of the most consistent things that I raised over anybody else on the board is how do we ensure that we have more homeowners? And that means every part of the homeownership level. So starter homes are an essential part of what we frankly are losing to some degree as the housing prices go up. And that's a challenge that there's not an easy solution to. The county has a program. It's not, in my mind, particularly robust at this point in time. It's part of the argument that the county staff, and they're cautious, they support it, but at the same time, their argument is we can help a lot more people if we have affordable rents versus, people purchasing a property and having that be affordable at the time of purchase. I think the difference is that communities are built on home ownership and long-term residents. I mean, it doesn't have to be homeowner, but long-term residents, and typically those are more likely to be homeowners. That is an essential part. There's not the same support, state and federal, that there used to be, particularly at the federal level. There is a state program for first-time home buyers that we're very familiar with, and our office is familiar with, and we're happy to, if anybody wants questions or has questions about that, they should contact our office, and we can definitely put them in touch with what we know are programs that can assist them in purchasing a home. But the overall price of housing in our area is, as it goes up, it makes it more difficult for people to own. And the only way we can truly make a dent in that is to build more housing on, and particularly on the highway. Most of our other areas are built out, so it's as the highway redevelops, we revitalize it. We're building up, increasing density, but that density provides more units for people to live in, and ultimately keeps the price of other homes in our community more competitive and not increasing as much. This past year is a great example. The price of homes, the price of housing, the property went up 10% overall around the county. In Mount Vernon district, it was closer to, I know it was close to 15%. And I know for most of our single family homes, it was up 15 to 20%. Those are huge increases. And obviously people's income didn't go up by 10, 15 or 20%. So that's the other part of the equation, is making sure that we have minimum wages that at least enable somebody who lives with somebody else, or maybe has others who can live together, that they could afford, put their money together and afford to own a place. But ultimately it's finding great jobs that pay high wages that will enable them to be successful here. And the BRT line is one way to reduce some of those costs, because you wouldn't have to have a car, or it wouldn't be as much a part of your expenses, if you will. You could put that money into houses and save a little bit of money somewhere else.
Okay, thank you.
There's no easy answer, Brenda. But in my mind, it's our continue to work on educating and providing good jobs and good opportunities, but also to keep building more housing and working with developers to put them in the right places so we minimize traffic and other negative impacts.
Okay, thank you. We do have another question from David Levine. And he says, thank you for joining us today, but how many units of affordable housing are contemplated for the PennDOL site?
David, we don't know that yet. I believe it'll be around 100. I think it's the site restrictions, the site constraints. I know that we've had some internal discussions, but they have been more back of the envelope kind of discussions, because that's really what the architect and engineer will help us determine, is what may be possible in that site. I would like to see it, again, my expectations that it will be a 3 or 4 story building, because that's the future of that corner. The future of that area will be high rises. I'm sure even more than that, even more than 4 or 5 stories. If you look at where the Lowe's and Giant are now, you would see potentially 10 or 20 story buildings in that location, because it's by the comprehensive plan would permit that. But it really has to do with a lot of factors that we don't know enough about yet. But stay tuned. That's absolutely what the task force will be looking at in conjunction with the architects and engineers.
Okay. And then Ann Hargrove has a question. Is there any money in hand or committed to improving existing housing along the US Route 1, including rental apartments? And this area has been called one of the most impoverished in Fairfax County.
I would say there's parts of the Richmond Highway corridor that are some of the most impoverished areas. And as a juxtaposition, we all know that Dan Snyder just bought the most expensive home in Fairfax County, which is also in Mount Vernon District. So Mount Vernon District encompasses the least expensive housing, as well as the 48 million type variety of housing that Dan Snyder bought. So we do have it all, which means that we're a real community and to some degree, but it also means that we have challenges, especially for those who need and would value and must have good housing. Rehabilitation wise, the county housing does have, we do renovate that on a periodic basis. And I don't know if Nick or Christine, I can't think of the name of the housing. The one that's on Fortson Road, that's in Lee District, is undergoing renovation right now. Is that Colt? I don't know. I won't get the name right. You remember the name of that one on Fortson Road, next to, right near United Community.
I can look it up, but no, I don't know it off the top of my head.
That's been undergoing renovation for the last 4 or 5 years. And then I know that there are plans for RHA to renovate some of the other housing that they own over the next 5 to 10 years. And I won't go into specifics, but we've had conversations about some of those units that are worn and need attention. The private developers, whether it's Wesley or Good Shepherd, I don't know if they have a specific routine that they follow for renovating or revitalizing their housing. But the good news with our not-for-profits is that they maintain quality housing. And the ones who don't maintain quality, the private landlords who are not doing that, they're a phone call away from us following up on that, meaning that there's code compliance requirements that they have to meet. And if they're not meeting, then we need to do that. That's part of our difficulty at times why we've been the county and I personally have been very, very supportive of not-for-profits purchasing some of the a few of the more affordable housing developments that we have, because we know that they will do a much better job of maintaining and ensuring that each of the units there are quality units.
Okay, are there other questions for Dan? I don't think there's any more in the chat. Ann?
Well, you just mentioned that the county supports nonprofits purchasing housing, so it can become affordable housing. Has that actually occurred in Fairfax, in the Mount Vernon district?
I would say constantly is probably there isn't a housing development in Mount Vernon district that didn't have county money involved in some way or other. And I would say typically it's providing bonds. They provide, I would say, tens of millions of dollars of bonds to enable the not-for-profit housing organizations to purchase those properties. In addition, have supported them in their efforts to get federal tax credits. I've been involved with that. I mean, every single person, every single entity, North Hill, that I keep talking about North Hill, that's huge amount of county money into that. The Wesley housing, huge amount of county money went into that. But they're bonds or housing bonds that put the if you will, the RHA bonds at, which is those are all county, if you will, guaranteed bonds, county supported bonds.
Yeah, Ian, if I could add to that,
please.
Dan is correct. We actually do, the nonprofits do receive county money to purchase the units. And also to your earlier question, they also do receive money to help rehab the units too, to get them up to quality standards. So that's all through support from Fairfax County.
Thanks, David. I mean, David, Good Shepherd does a great job of that. And I've been proud to have been connected with them for former president of the board of Good Shepherd for several years and on the board for many years. And they're the kind of quality not-for-profits that really make our housing work in this community. I'm far more supportive of the not-for-profits running that housing than I am the county. I think they do a better job and are more responsive than the county can be. It's not the criticizing the county. I think it's just a way for, frankly, getting more done with a little bit lower cost. And I think all of us support that.
Okay. It looks like there are no more questions, comments. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today and providing us the updates and information. We appreciate everything that you've shared. Kathy, I'm going to turn it over to you if there are any announcements or closures.
Just to say that thank you everyone for coming. We were afraid during spring break week we'd have small attendance, but this is great. Great questions as usual. And I guess anyone who's on the steering committee, look for that email coming up soon. And I did want to mention that we are in talks with the new WISH Center, which is the Lee District Community Center. And we're hopeful that our last meeting of the full group will be in person. So I just wanted to let everybody know. I'm going to be talking to them tomorrow, so I'll have more information on that at our next meeting. And that's all I have.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Nick, for doing the slides, Christine, for your work. And the name of that development was Old Colchester. It's on Fortson Road. So, and I have to also definitely have to thank Pam for all her decades of work on the corridor, and we would not be where we are today in terms of the support and what we provide to our community without Pam's work. So again, Pam, I know you're retired, quote unquote, but
yeah, call me. I'm here to help.
Excellent. My pleasure. Thank you all. Let me know if I can. And Terry, oh geez, Carrie, I should have had Carrie, our other retiree, on the call here.
But we're both still ready to be active.
Well, I got Carrie on a committee already, so and I'm sure that Dahlia would be happy to. Maybe I think you're already on one of the committees in the area. Dahlia got you on one of those committees, so we're always happy to utilize your skill and expertise because it's needed. So, thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.